explanation procedures enables the listener to understand a D as a D regardless of speaker or speech rate. Listeners can exploit various acoustic cues in the signal as well as relationships among different acoustic elements to get around the lack of invariance problem. For example, the frequency of the first or lowest formant for A is high relative to E and U, though the precise values may differ among speakers. Additionally, certain types of speech sounds have characteristic properties that can be relied upon for identification. Stops have a brief period of silence followed by a burst. Fricatives produce high-frequency noise, and vowels are associated with particular formant structures. These acoustic cues help listeners identify phonological units in the signal regardless of speaker. As we might expect, the units we perceive depend on the language we know, especially its phonemic inventory. For example, the initial consonant in the, and do are physically distinct from one another because of the formant transitions from the consonant to the different vowels, a co-articulation effect. Nevertheless, speakers perceive the Ds as instances of the same phonological unit, namely the phoneme D. This phenomenon is known generally as categorical perception. Speakers perceive physically distinct stimuli as belonging to the same category because their perceptions are assisted by knowledge of the underlying classificatory system. In this case of language, varying sounds are ascribed to phonemes based on the speaker's knowledge of the phonology of his language. Categorical perception is one of the mechanisms that the speech perception system uses to deal with variability in the signal. Similarly, speakers of English can perceive the difference between L and R, despite their acoustic similarity, because these phones represent distinct phonemes in the language. Speakers of Japanese have great difficulty in differentiating the two because they are allophones of one phoneme in their language. Returning to the segmentation problem, words and syntactic units such as phrases and sentences are seldom surrounded by boundaries such as clauses. Nevertheless, words are obviously units of perception. The spaces between them in writing support this view. How do we find the words and syntactic constituents in the speech stream? Stress and intonation provide some cues to these units. For example, in English, 90% of the words used in conversation begin with a stressed syllable. Now let us proceed to our last topic, which is the lexical access and word recognition. Psycholinguists have conducted a great deal of research on lexical access or word recognition, the process by which listeners obtain information about the meaning and syntactic properties of a word from their mental lexicon. One technique is to ask whether a string of letters or sounds is or is not a word. Subjects must respond by pressing one button if the stimulus is an actual word and a different button if it is not. So they are making a lexical decision. Lexical decision tasks can also provide information about how we use our phonological knowledge in lexical access. Studies show that listeners respond more slowly to possible non-words such as flap and plim than to impossible non-words such as tlat and mrak. The listener can quickly reject the impossible words based on phonotactic knowledge so that a lexical search is unnecessary. The speed with which a listener can retrieve a particular word also depends on the size of the word's phonological neighborhood. A neighborhood is comprised of all the words that are phonologically similar to the target word. A word like pat has dense neighborhood because there are many similar words: bat, pad, pat, pit, and so on. While a word like crib has far fewer neighbors. Words with larger neighborhoods take longer to retrieve than words from smaller ones because more phonological information is required to single out a word in a denser neighborhood. Word can also be activated by hearing semantically related words. This effect is known as semantic priming. A listener will be faster at making a lexical decision on the word doctor if he has just heard nurse than if he has just heard a semantically unrelated word such as flower. The word nurse is said to prime the word doctor. When we hear a priming word, related words are awakened and become more readily accessible for a few moments. This priming effect might arise because semantically related words are near each other or linked to each other in the mental lexicon. Morphological priming is kind of semantic priming in which morpheme of a multi-morphemic word primes a related word. For example, sheepdog primes wool as a result of sheep, even when one morpheme is free and the other bound is as in runner. The free morpheme run primes words like race. Stranger yet, even in pseudo-multimorphemic words such as summer, which does not mean one who sums, the word sum is primed much as paint is primed by the word painter. The example suggests that morphological decomposition is taking place automatically based on the phonetics of the word irrespectively of the semantics. Lexical decision techniques can be evaluated alongside results from brain studies to provide a more detailed understanding of the process of lexical access. In some cases, the electrical brain activity in experimental subjects indicates that lexical access is occurring while RT measurements do not. For example, teach may prime to related thought according to brain activity but not according to RT measurements. These results suggest that lexical decision occurs in stages and the RT measurements are insensitive to earlier stages, whereas the brain measurements are taken continuously and reflect both earlier and later stages. Lexical ambiguities also provide important insights into how listeners access the mental lexicon. In certain experimental tests, artists are longer with ambiguous words than unambiguous ones, suggesting that ambiguous words require more processing resources. Indeed, studies show that listeners retrieve all meanings of an ambiguous word even when the sentence containing the word is biased toward one of the meanings. For example, when the word palm is heard in the gypsy, read the young man's palm, it primes both the word hand and the word tree according to RT measurements. The other meaning of palm as in palm tree is apparently activated even though that meaning is not a part of the meaning of the priming sentence. That's all. Thank you.